The massive alien ship hung in Earth's sky like a dark metal moon. Dr. Kim Dae-hyun stood at the window of the Seoul Space Center, watching the vessel block out the afternoon sun. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted his tie. Today would change everything for humanity. "They are coming down now," said Colonel Park Min-ho, walking into the room. The military officer looked calm, but Dae-hyun noticed the tight grip on his tablet. 3 shuttles. The main delegation will land here in 20 minutes. Dae-hyun nodded. For 6 months, Earth had prepared for this moment. The Galactic Federation had finally agreed to consider humanity for membership. It should have been a celebration. Instead, Dae-hyun felt like he was preparing for a trial. The first shuttle landed with barely a sound. Dae-hyun had expected noise, fire, the dramatic arrival he had seen in movies. Instead, the sleek craft simply appeared on the landing pad as if it had always been there. The technology was beyond anything humans possessed. The shuttle door opened with a soft hiss. Commander Vextar stepped out first. Dae-hyun had seen pictures, but meeting the alien leader in person was different. Vextar stood nearly 8 feet, tall, his body made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through his translucent skin in slow, hypnotic patterns. His face was angular, beautiful, and completely without warmth. Behind him came 3 more Kelthari officers, each as tall and imposing as their commander. Their crystal bodies caught the sunlight and threw rainbows across the landing pad. Following them were the Zephyrians, and Dae-hyun had to suppress a shudder. The insect-like beings moved on 6 legs, their black chitinous armor gleaming. Their large compound eyes reflected everything in thousands of tiny fragments. "Welcome to Earth," Dae-hyun said, stepping forward with Colonel Park beside him. "I am Dr. Kim Dae-hyun, xenobiology specialist and your primary liaison. This is Colonel Park Min-ho, our military advisor." Commander Vextar looked down at them. When he spoke, his voice was like wind chimes made of ice. "So small," he said, not to them, but to his officers. "And soft-looking. Are these truly the dominant species of this world?" One of the Zephyrians clicked something that sounded like laughter. "They appear to be mammals, Commander. Warm-blooded, fragile. Look how they require artificial coverings to protect their delicate skin." Dae-hyun felt heat rise in his cheeks, but he kept his voice steady. "We have prepared a full presentation about human capabilities and our planet's resources. Perhaps we could move to the conference room where you would be more comfortable." "Comfortable?" Vextar's crystal face showed what might have been amusement. "Dr. Kim, we are here to assess your species' worthiness for Federation membership. This requires understanding your true nature, not sitting in comfortable rooms." The group walked toward the main building. As they moved, Dae-hyun noticed how the aliens observed everything with calculating eyes. They were not here as friends making a social visit. They were predators studying potential prey. "Your planet is interesting," said one of the Kelthari officers. "So much chaotic plant growth. On civilized worlds, we control nature properly. We shape our environments to serve us." "Earth's ecosystems are complex," Dae-hyun replied carefully. "We have learned to work with nature rather than simply controlling it." "Work with nature?" The Zephyrian beside them made that clicking laugh again. "How primitive. True civilization rises above such limitations." In the conference room, Colonel Park activated the presentation. Images of human achievements filled the screen: cities, technology, art, medicine. The aliens watched with polite boredom. "Impressive for a species so young," Vextar said when the presentation ended. "But the Federation requires more than pretty pictures and simple tools. We must know if humanity can contribute to galactic security." "Our military forces are capable," Colonel Park said. "We have extensive training programs and advanced weapon systems." "Weapon systems," repeated one of the Zephyrians. "You mean artificial tools, external devices you depend upon because your natural bodies are weak." Vextar stood, his crystal form towering over the seated humans. "This brings us to the true purpose of our visit. The Federation faces threats that require warriors, not technicians hiding behind machines." He gestured and his skin began to glow. Energy crackled along his arms, forming into bright spears of light. We Kelthari are born warriors. Our bodies are natural armor. Our energy projection can destroy vehicles. We do not need external weapons because we are weapons. The Zephyrian delegation leader rose on his hind legs, his front limbs extending to show razor-sharp claws. My people have hunted across 1,000 worlds. Our natural armor stops most projectiles. Our speed and coordination make us perfect soldiers. But you humans, Vextar continued, his glowing form casting eerie shadows on the wall. What are you without your tools? Soft creatures who cannot survive your own planet's weather without artificial protection? Daehyun felt something, cold settle in his stomach. This was not an evaluation, this was a demonstration of superiority. The aliens had already decided what humanity was worth. Your planet's wilderness areas are quaint, said the Zephyrian leader. Simple ecosystems that pose no real challenge to evolved beings like ourselves. We have seen the reports, forests full of harmless plants, deserts with only temperature variations, cold regions with nothing but frozen water. Those environments can be dangerous, Colonel Park said quietly. Dangerous? Vextar's laugh was like breaking glass. To creatures as fragile as yourselves, perhaps. But real warriors adapt to any environment using their natural abilities. The commander walked to the window, looking out at the Sol skyline. The Federation needs species that can fight without dependency on technology. Warriors who can survive anywhere, defeat any enemy, using only what nature gave them. He turned back to face the humans. We propose a simple test. Combat trials. In 3 of your planet's wilderness areas, our warriors against yours. No advanced technology, no vehicles, no energy weapons, just natural ability against natural ability. And if we refuse, Daehyun asked, then humanity will be classified as a protected species. You will receive Federation protection in exchange for tribute payments and resource extraction rights. A comfortable arrangement for a peaceful species. The words were polite, but the meaning was clear. Accept the challenge or become slaves. Colonel Park looked at Daehyun. Something passed between them, an understanding that went beyond words. They had prepared for this possibility. We accept, Colonel Park said. Vextar's crystal face showed surprise. You accept? Even knowing that defeat means permanent subjugation? We accept, Park repeated. But we choose the specific locations and the rules of engagement. Agreed, Vextar said immediately. Choose your most challenging environments, Colonel. It will make no difference to the outcome. As the aliens filed out to return to their ship, Daehyun remained by the window. The crystal beings and insect warriors moved with casual confidence. They truly believed this would be easy. Are we making a terrible mistake? Daehyun asked. Colonel Park was already reaching for his secure phone. Maybe, he said. But they made one first. They think they know what humans are capable of. He began dialing a number. They are about to learn that surviving on Earth for 200,000 years has taught us a few things about being dangerous. Outside, the alien ship waited like a patient predator. But down in the city, in bases around the world, other predators were beginning to stir. Predators who had learned their hunting skills in the most savage school in the galaxy, Earth itself. Colonel Park Minho stood in the secure briefing room deep beneath the Sol Space Center. Around the table sat 3 people who would determine humanity's future. Each one looked ordinary, unremarkable even. That was exactly what made them perfect. Though aliens want to test us in wilderness environments, Park said, sliding folders across the table. They believe we are weak without our technology. They are wrong. Sergeant Lee Ji-won opened her folder first. She was small, barely 5 feet tall, with calloused hands and quiet eyes. Most people would walk past her on the street without a second glance. They would never guess she had spent 3 years living with indigenous tribes in the Amazon, learning secrets that no military academy could teach. Rainforest combat, she said, reading the mission brief. How many opponents? 6 Kelthari warriors. Full energy projection capabilities. Natural crystal armor. They chose this environment because they think plants cannot hurt them. Lee Ji-won smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Plants are the least of their worries. Master Sergeant Choi Hyun-woo studied his assignment next. He was built like a mountain himself, broad shoulders and steady hands. His face showed the weathering of countless winters spent in places where normal humans could not survive. Siberian wilderness, Zephyrian hunters. He nodded slowly. Cold weather specialists? No, Park replied. Insect-based physiology. They assume their natural armor will protect them from temperature extremes. They have never encountered real winter. Then they will learn, Choi said simply. Staff Sergeant Nam So-young was the last to speak. She looked like any office worker, neat and professional. Only her eyes gave away the truth. They held the patient, calculating gaze of someone who had learned to think like the desert itself. Australian Outback, she read. Mixed squad including their commander. They want to finish this personally. Can you handle it? Park asked. Nam So-young closed the folder. Colonel, I have spent 4 years learning from Aboriginal trackers. The desert does not just live in me, I live in it. These aliens have never met anything like what I will become. Park nodded. Remember, this is not just about winning. This is about sending a message. They think Earth is a soft world that breeds soft creatures. Show them what Earth really makes. The 3 warriors left to begin their preparations. Park walked to his office and made a secure call to Dr. Kim Dae-hyun. Have you told them yet? Park asked. Told them what? Dae-hyun replied. That we are not sending armies. That 3 individual humans will face their entire strike teams. There was silence on the line. Then Dae-hyun laughed. Are you insane? They will think we are insulting them. Good, Park said. Let them think we are arrogant. It will make the shock greater when they lose. The next morning, the alien delegation assembled at the landing pad. Commander Vextar stood with his officers, their crystal bodies gleaming in the early sunlight. The Zephyrian hunters clicked and chittered among themselves, their compound eyes reflecting everything in prismatic fragments. We have selected our environments, Colonel Park announced. The Amazon rainforest of South America, the Siberian tundra of Northern Asia, the Australian outback. Excellent choices, Vextar said. These will demonstrate the superiority of evolved beings over primitive mammals. How many warriors will you send to each location? 1. The aliens went silent. Even their breathing seemed to stop. 1? Repeated the Zephyrian leader. 1 human against full strike teams? 1 human per location, Park confirmed. Unless you feel that is unfair? The insult was carefully delivered. Either the aliens accepted the challenge as stated, or they admitted they needed overwhelming numbers to defeat individual humans. Very well, Vextar said, his voice sharp with anger. We accept these terms. When your warriors are defeated, remember that you chose this humiliation. When do we begin? Asked Dr. Kim Dae-hyun. Our warriors will deploy tomorrow, the commander replied. Your humans may enter their assigned territories now if they wish. It will not help them. That afternoon, Sergeant Lee Ji-won walked into the Amazon rainforest carrying only basic survival gear. No advanced weapons, no communication equipment, no GPS. She looked like a tourist who had taken a wrong turn. The jungle swallowed her within minutes. 2,000 miles north, Master Sergeant Choi Hyun-woo stepped off a transport plane onto the frozen ground of Siberia. The wind cut like knives and the temperature was 30 degrees below zero. He shouldered his simple pack and walked into the endless white wilderness. The snow began erasing his footprints before he was out of sight. A world away, Staff Sergeant Nam So-young entered the Australian outback as the sun reached its peak. The heat shimmered off red rocks and endless sand. She carried water for 2 days and basic camping equipment. Nothing more. The desert claimed her like it claimed everything else that dared to enter. Back in Seoul, the alien commanders prepared their strike teams. The Kelthari warriors powered up their energy projection systems and tested their crystal armor. The Zephyrian hunters sharpened their natural weapons and reviewed tactical formations. This will be over quickly, Vextar told his officers. 3 primitive humans against our finest warriors. It will barely qualify as exercise. Dr. Kim Dae-hyun watched the preparations through surveillance feeds. Colonel, he said to Park over their secure line, are you certain about this? They have energy weapons that can destroy tanks, natural armor that deflects missiles, speed and strength far beyond human normal. Doctor, Park replied calmly, what do you know about human evolution? Basic biology, natural selection, adaptation to environment. Earth has been selecting and adapting humans for 200,000 years. Every generation that survived did so because they were harder, smarter, and more dangerous than the ones who died. We are the final product of the most brutal training program in the galaxy. Park paused, watching as the alien strike teams loaded into their shuttles. They think they understand what humans are because they see our cities and technology. But cities are not where we learn to be human. We learned in the places where everything wants to kill you. In the jungle where every plant might be poison. In the cold where one mistake means death. In the desert where water is life and shade is survival. The shuttles lifted off, carrying alien warriors toward what they believed would be easy victories. These aliens are about to meet humans in the places that made us human, Park continued. They will discover that taking away our technology does not make us weaker. It makes us remember what we really are. The sun was setting over Seoul, painting the sky red like blood. Somewhere in the Amazon, Lee Ji-won was preparing her first trap. In Siberia, Choi Hun-woo was reading weather signs in the wind. In Australia, Nam So-young was finding water where alien sensors would see only rock. The real test was about to begin. The Kelthari strike team landed in the Amazon at dawn. 6 crystal warriors emerged from their shuttle, their bodies glowing with stored energy. Squad leader Keith Var surveyed the green chaos around them with disgust. Primitive plant ecosystem, he announced to his team. Disorganized growth patterns, no intelligent design. The jungle pressed in around them, alive with sounds they did not recognize. Birds called from hidden perches, insects buzzed in clouds around their heads. Something large crashed through the undergrowth nearby, but when they turned their energy, weapons toward the sound, they found nothing. Scanners show the human entered 3 days ago, reported Sub-Commander Yelthara. She is moving deeper into the forest. Simple tactical error. She traps herself in dense terrain where our energy projection will be most effective. Kethvar nodded. Begin pursuit. This will be finished before midday. They moved into the jungle. In standard formation, energy weapons charged and ready. Their crystal armor deflected the branches that tried to catch them. Their natural strength allowed them to push through barriers that would stop normal creatures. What they did not notice was that they were being watched. Lee Ji-won crouched motionless in a tree 50 feet above their heads. Her skin was painted with mud and plant dyes. Her hair was woven with leaves and vines. She had become part of the jungle itself. She had spent 3 days preparing this battlefield. Every step the aliens took would be guided by paths she had created. Every direction they chose would lead them deeper into traps she had built with nothing but jungle materials and human cunning. The Kelthari advanced confidently for the first hour. They followed the obvious trail Lee Ji-won had left, crushing plants and breaking branches as they moved. They spoke loudly to each other, certain that stealth was unnecessary against a primitive human. Energy signature ahead, announced their sensor operator. The target is close. They quickened their pace, weapons ready for combat. Around them, the jungle seemed to grow thicker, darker. Vines hung like curtains. The canopy blocked the sun, turning day into green twilight. Sub-Commander Yelthara was the first to die. She stepped on what looked like solid ground. Instead, her foot went through a thin mat of woven branches and leaves. Below was a pit filled with sharpened bamboo stakes. Her crystal armor protected her from the spears, but the pit was deeper than expected. As she fell, poisoned thorns scratched the gaps between her armor plates. The poison was not deadly to her physiology, but it was something her medical systems could not identify or treat. It caused paralysis that spread slowly through her limbs. Yelthara is down, Kithvar reported. Primitive trap, but effective. Continue advance. They pulled their teammate from the pit, but she could no longer move properly. They had to leave. Her behind with one guard while the rest continued hunting. That left 4 Kelthari moving deeper into Li Jiwan's maze. The second trap was more subtle. A vine stretched across the path at ankle height, so thin it was almost invisible. When warrior Zexthon stepped on it, it triggered a deadfall. A massive log, weighted with stones, swung down from the trees. His crystal armor saved his life, but the impact sent him crashing into a tree trunk. As he struggled to stand, tiny darts began hitting him from multiple directions. Li Jiwan had learned from indigenous hunters how to make blowguns from hollow reeds. The darts were tipped with poison from local frogs, refined and concentrated through techniques passed down for generations. Zexthon's armor protected most of his body, but the darts found the joints, the gaps, the soft spots that every armor design must have. One by one, his systems began failing as alien toxins attacked his nervous system. Contact from multiple directions, he reported, firing energy bolts randomly into the forest. The shots lit up trees and vines but hit nothing important. His attacker was already gone. Kethvar ordered his remaining warriors into a defensive circle. "Show yourself, human," he called. "Face us in honorable combat." The only response was the sound of the jungle itself. Birds calling, insects buzzing, and somewhere in the green darkness the soft whisper of something moving. The third warrior died when he brushed against what looked like an ordinary vine. Li Jiwan had relocated several specimens of a local plant whose touch caused severe allergic reactions in most oxygen-breathing species. The aliens' breathing passages swelled shut within minutes. Now only Kethvar and one subordinate remained, active. Their confidence had died with their squad mates. They stood back to back, weapons ready, but they no longer knew where the enemy was or when the next attack would come. "Thermal scanners show nothing," the surviving warrior reported. "How is this possible?" "All living things generate heat signatures." Li Jiwan had learned to control her body temperature, using meditation techniques combined with mud coating that masked her thermal output. To their sensors, she was just another part of the jungle background. The final assault came at sunset. As darkness fell, Li Jiwan began her psychological warfare. Sounds moved around them in the darkness. Branches cracked as if under heavy weight. Leaves rustled with no wind. Water dripped in patterns that almost sounded like footsteps. The surviving Kelthari warrior began firing at shadows. His energy weapon lit up the forest in brief, brilliant flashes that destroyed his own night vision and revealed his position. To his hunter, "Cease firing," Kethvar ordered. "You are wasting power and giving away our location." "Something is out there," his subordinate replied. "Multiple contacts, moving in circles around us." But Li Jiwan was alone. The sounds came from carefully placed devices she had built from jungle materials. Hollow gourds that amplified wind noise, balanced sticks that creaked like footsteps when air pressure changed. Simple but effective psychological weapons. The aliens spent the night back to back, jumping at every sound, firing at every shadow. By morning, their energy weapons were nearly drained and their nerves were shattered. That was when Li Jiwan finally showed herself. She emerged from what Kethvar had thought was solid ground, rising like a forest spirit from beneath a covering of leaves and mud. She carried no advanced weapons, only a spear made from hardwood and stone, and a blowgun carved from bamboo. Kethvar raised his energy weapon and fired. The bolt passed through empty air. Li Jiwan was no longer where she had been. She moved, through the jungle like water, flowing around obstacles, using every tree and vine as cover. Her movements were impossible to predict because they were not tactical in the military sense. They were organic, part of the forest's own rhythm. Kethvar's remaining subordinate tried to track her with his weapon, but the jungle itself seemed to be fighting against him. Vines caught his arms. Branches blocked his view. His feet slipped on ground that had been solid moments before. The dart took him in the neck, in the small gap where his helmet joined his armor. He fell slowly, his crystal body dimming as the poison shut down his systems. Kethvar found himself alone, facing a human who had become something beyond his understanding. She stood 20 feet away, clearly visible but somehow still part of the forest around her. "You are not human," he said, his voice distorted by fear. "Humans are soft, weak. You are something else." Li Jiwan spoke for the first time in 4 days. Her voice was quiet, calm, with the patience of someone who had learned to think like the jungle itself. "I am human," she said. "This is what humans become when Earth teaches us to survive." She raised her spear, but Kethvar was already backing away, his energy weapon forgotten. He had come here expecting to fight a primitive mammal with crude tools. Instead, he faced something that had merged with the most dangerous ecosystem he had ever encountered. He turned and ran, crashing through the jungle toward the emergency beacon that would call for extraction. Behind him, Li Jiwan watched him, go with patient eyes. She did not pursue. The jungle would do that for her. When the rescue shuttle found Kethvar 8 hours later, he was barely conscious, covered in insect bites and plant toxins. His crystal armor cracked and failing. He was the only survivor of a 6-warrior strike team that had been eliminated by a single human armed with nothing but jungle materials and 200,000 years of human evolution. On the shuttle, as the medics worked on him, Kethvar kept repeating the same words over and over. She was the jungle. She was the jungle itself. The news of the Amazon defeat reached the Zephyrian hunting pack as they prepared to deploy to Siberia. Hunt leader Skekchen clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his kind. One frightened crystal-skinned survivor telling stories about jungle spirits, he chittered to his 5-warrior pack. Typical Kelthari weakness. They rely too much on energy weapons and not enough on natural hunting instincts. The Zephyrians were different from their crystalline allies. Where the Kelthari were individual warriors, the insect-like aliens were pack hunters. They moved together, thought together, communicated through chemical signals and subsonic clicks that created a hive mind of deadly efficiency. "The cold will work to our advantage," Skekchen continued as their shuttle descended toward the Siberian landing site. "Insect physiology handles temperature extremes better than mammalian systems. Our chitin armor will not fail in cold weather like crystal formations." They landed on a frozen lake surrounded by endless white wilderness. The wind cut across the ice like knives, carrying snow that stung any exposed surface. The temperature was 40 degrees below zero, cold enough to kill most warm-blooded creatures within hours. "Scanners show the human entered this region 5 days ago," reported pack member Yithka. "Thermal signature indicates he is moving north toward the tundra. Proper. Foolish tactical decision. He traps himself in the coldest region available." "Begin pursuit," ordered Skekchen. "Standard hunting formation. This primitive mammal will be frozen meat within hours." They moved across the snow in perfect coordination, their 6 legs distributing weight efficiently across the frozen surface. Their compound eyes scanned constantly for heat signatures, movement, any sign of their prey. What they did not understand was that they were already being hunted. Master Sergeant Choi Hyunwoo had spent 5 days preparing the battlefield. Unlike Li Jiwan's jungle traps, his weapons were environmental. He had learned from Inuit hunters and Siberian trackers how to turn the cold itself into an ally. He watched the aliens from a snow cave 2 miles ahead of their path. They moved, predictably, following the obvious trail he had left. Their thermal scanners worked perfectly, showing them exactly what he wanted them to see. The Zephyrians advanced confidently for the first few hours. Their natural armor seemed to handle the cold well, and their pack coordination gave them tactical advantages over any individual opponent. "Target is maintaining distance," reported Yithka. "Probably trying to tire us with extended pursuit." Classic weak mammal strategy. They did not notice that the wind was getting stronger, or that the cloud formations overhead were changing in ways that local weather experts would have recognized immediately. Choi Hyunwoo had learned to read Arctic weather with the skill of someone whose life depended on it. The storm approaching was natural, but he had timed their hunt to coincide with its arrival. The first Zephyrian died when he stepped through what looked like solid snow into a crevasse that had been concealed with carefully placed ice sheets. The fall did not kill him, but the shock of plunging into water below the ice did. Insect physiology handled cold air well, but sudden immersion in near-freezing water triggered a completely different biological response. The warrior's systems shut down rapidly as hypothermia set in faster than his pack could rescue him. First loss to environmental hazard, Skekchen reported. Continue pursuit. One trap does not indicate tactical superiority. That was when the storm hit. The wind rose from gusting to howling in minutes. Snow began falling so hard that visibility dropped to a few feet. The temperature plummeted another 20 degrees as the storm system reached full intensity. The Zephyrians tried to maintain formation, but the storm scattered them like leaves. Their chemical communication system failed as scents were swept away instantly. Their subsonic clicks were drowned out by wind noise. For the first time in the hunt, they were individuals instead of a pack. The second warrior died from equipment failure. His breathing apparatus, designed for temperate climates, began forming ice crystals in the filters. As he struggled with the malfunctioning equipment, he lost contact with the pack and wandered into an area where Choi Hyunwoo had prepared a more direct trap. The avalanche was small and controlled, triggered by weight sensors hidden in the snow. Not enough to cause widespread destruction, but perfectly aimed to bury one confused alien who could no longer coordinate with his teammates. Pack integrity compromised, Skekchen reported over the communication system. Reforming at Rally Point Alpha. But the storm was not finished with them. As they tried to regroup, the wind shifted direction, driving snow directly into their compound eyes. Ice began forming on their sensory organs, reducing their effectiveness to nearly zero. Choi Hyunwoo moved through the storm like a ghost. He had trained in weather like this for years, learning to read wind patterns and snow conditions by touch and sound. Where the aliens fought the environment, he flowed with it. The third Zephyrian never saw the attack coming. A figure in white camouflage appeared from what looked like solid snow, struck with a simple metal blade and vanished back into the storm before the alien could react. The wound was not immediately fatal, but in the extreme cold, any injury became a life-threatening emergency. Blood froze in the wound, equipment malfunctioned, and hypothermia set in rapidly. "Contact! Contact!" the injured warrior transmitted. "Human located and engaging." But when the pack tried to converge on his position, they found only empty snow and wind. Their hunter had vanished as completely as if he had never existed. Nightfall. Only Skekchen and one pack member remained combat effective. They huddled together in an emergency shelter, their thermal systems working overtime to maintain body temperature. "This is not possible," chittered the surviving pack member. "Mammals cannot function in these conditions. Their biology is too fragile for extreme cold." Skekchen was beginning to understand the truth, but he refused to accept it. "The human has shelter somewhere. Advanced equipment hidden from our scanners. No primitive creature could survive in this environment." As if summoned by his words, Choi Hyunwoo appeared at the entrance to their shelter. He wore simple cold weather gear, carried basic weapons, and moved with the casual confidence of someone completely at home in conditions that were killing the aliens minute by minute. "Your equipment is failing," he said in perfect galactic standard. His breath formed clouds in the frigid air, but his voice was steady and calm. "Your body temperature is dropping. You have perhaps 2 hours before hypothermia becomes irreversible." Skekchen raised his natural weapons, the razor-sharp claws that had killed prey on a dozen worlds. But his movements were slow, clumsy. The cold had affected his reflexes more than he wanted to admit. "You should be dead," he clicked. "This cold should have killed you days ago." Choi Hyunwoo smiled, and there was something frightening in the expression. Not cruelty, but the patient satisfaction of a predator who had successfully hunted much more dangerous prey. "My ancestors lived through ice ages that lasted thousands of years," he said. "They learned to hunt mammoth in weather that makes this look warm. Every human alive today is descended from survivors who conquered winter itself." The surviving pack member tried to flank around behind the human, but his movements were telegraphed and clumsy. Choi Hyunwoo moved like water, flowing aside from the attack and striking back with devastating efficiency. The blade that killed the Zephyrian was made from simple steel, forged by human hands using techniques thousands of years old. No energy weapons, no advanced materials, just metal and skill and the accumulated knowledge of countless human winters. Skekchen found himself alone, facing an enemy who seemed to grow stronger as conditions grew worse. The humans stood in the storm without shelter, without advanced heating systems, and showed no signs of discomfort. "What are you?" Skekchen whispered. "I am what Earth makes when it needs survivors." Choi Hyunwoo replied, "My people learned to be human in places where everything else dies. Cold is not our enemy, it is our teacher." The final confrontation was brief. Skekchen was operating at perhaps 30% efficiency, his systems failing one by one as the cold penetrated his natural armor. Choi Hyunwoo moved with the fluid precision of someone whose ancestors had hunted in winter storms for tens of thousands of years. When the rescue shuttle found Skekchen 12 hours later, he was alive, but barely conscious. His pack was gone, eliminated by environmental factors and a single human who had turned the Arctic itself into a weapon. The shuttle crew found Choi Hyunwoo 3 miles away, calmly preparing a simple meal over a fire made from materials he had gathered from the tundra. He looked up as they approached, nodded politely, and continued cooking. "Tell your commanders something," he said as they prepared to leave. "We did not conquer this planet by being soft. We conquered it by being harder than everything that tried to kill us." As the shuttle lifted off, Skekchen stared down at the endless white wilderness that had destroyed his pack. Somewhere in that frozen hell, a human was finishing his dinner, and probably planning his next lesson in survival. The report he would file would be even more disturbing than the Amazon incident. The humans were not just adapted to extreme environments, they were improved by them. Commander Vextar stood in the command center of his orbital ship, watching reports from 2 failed missions scroll across his displays. The Amazon disaster had been unexpected. The Siberian catastrophe had been shocking. Now he would lead the Australian mission personally. "This ends now," he announced to his mixed strike team of Kelthari and Zephyrian elite warriors. 2 humans have defeated our forces through trickery and environmental advantages. I will not allow a third such humiliation." His team was the Federation's finest. 4 Kelthari warriors with enhanced armor and weapons. 3 Zephyrian hunters with modified environmental suits. And Vextar himself, a commander who had conquered 17 worlds. "The desert environment will work to our advantage," he continued. "Open terrain with clear sight lines. No dense vegetation for concealment. No extreme cold to interfere with equipment. Just empty wasteland and a single primitive human." They deployed at dawn to the Australian outback. The shuttle landed on Idyardevam, red earth baked hard by endless sun. Heat shimmers rose from distant rocks. The landscape looked empty, dead, hostile to all life. "Scanners show the target entered this region 6 days ago," reported elite warrior Thexmore. Last known position was approximately 50 kilometers northeast, moving toward the interior. Vextar surveyed the barren landscape with satisfaction. No cover, no resources, no advantages for the human to exploit. This will be finished quickly. They began their advance in perfect formation, weapons charged and ready. Their environmental suits regulated temperature efficiently. Their enhanced scanners could detect life signs from kilometers away. What they could not detect was the patient intelligence that had been preparing this battlefield for nearly a week. Staff Sergeant Nam So-young had learned the desert's secrets from Aboriginal trackers whose ancestors had survived in this environment for 60,000 years. Where the aliens saw emptiness, she saw a complex ecosystem full of resources and opportunities. She watched them from a position that should have been impossible. The rocky outcrop where she crouched looked barren, but she had learned to find shade where others saw only sun, water where others saw only stone. The aliens advanced confidently for the first several hours. Their formation was textbook perfect. Their equipment functioned flawlessly. Their thermal scanners swept the landscape systematically, searching for any sign of their prey. But Nam So-young was no longer generating a thermal signature they could recognize. She had learned techniques for controlling body temperature and had covered herself with materials that made her invisible to their sensors. To their equipment, she was just another sun-heated rock. The first indication that something was wrong came when elite warrior Thexmore began experiencing equipment problems. His environmental suit's cooling system started cycling erratically. His water reserves showed contamination warnings. System malfunction, he reported. Cooling efficiency down to 60%. Check your equipment, Vextar ordered. Desert conditions can cause overheating in inadequately maintained systems. But it was not a malfunction. Nam So-young had learned from desert peoples how certain local minerals could interfere with water purification systems. She had spent days identifying and collecting these substances, then introducing them into the water sources the aliens would inevitably use to refill their supplies. The contamination was not poisonous to their physiology, but it caused their filtration systems to work harder, generating more heat and using more power. Within hours, 3 of the 8 aliens were experiencing cooling system problems. Their environmental suits were working at maximum capacity just to maintain safe internal temperatures. Thermal efficiency dropping across multiple units, reported hunt specialist Clixandra. Environmental conditions are more challenging than predicted. Vextar checked his own systems. Everything appeared normal, but he noticed that his suit was using more power than expected. The desert heat was more intense than their intelligence had suggested. That was when Nam So-young began her real attack. The first trap was subtle, a section of ground that looked solid but had been carefully undermined. When Zephyrian scout Yexthil stepped on it, he plunged through into a hidden cavity filled with reflective surfaces. The cavity was not deep enough to cause injury, but it was lined with polished metal and mirrors that Nam So-young had positioned to focus and amplify the desert sun. The trapped alien found himself in an oven that reached temperatures above what his environmental suit could handle. His distress calls brought 2 teammates to rescue him, but the damage was done. His suit was overloaded, his equipment was failing, and heat exhaustion was setting in rapidly. Environmental trap, Vextar reported grimly. The human has been modifying the terrain. The second attack came at midday when the sun reached its peak intensity. Nam So-young had positioned curved pieces of metal at strategic locations, creating focused beams of reflected sunlight that could overheat equipment at a distance. The aliens found themselves walking through invisible columns of superheated air that their suits struggled to handle. Systems that had been functioning normally began failing as heat stress pushed them beyond design limits. "This is not possible," declared elite warrior Genthara. "The human has no advanced technology. How is she generating these thermal attacks?" Vextar was beginning to understand, but the knowledge disturbed him. "She is not generating them. She is redirecting environmental energy, using the desert itself as a weapon." By afternoon, half the strike team was operating with degraded equipment. Their environmental suits were working at maximum capacity, power reserves were draining faster than expected, and several warriors were showing signs of heat stress despite their technological protection. That was when Nam So-young showed herself. She appeared on a ridge 500 meters away, clearly visible against the red rock. She carried no energy weapons, no advanced equipment, just simple desert survival gear and weapons that looked like they had been made from local materials. "Target acquired," reported Thexmore, raising his energy weapon. "Clear shot. No obstructions." "Fire," ordered Vextar. The energy bolt lanced across the desert, lighting up the air with superheated plasma. It struck exactly where Nam So-young had been standing. She was no longer there. The desert had techniques for moving unseen that the aliens could not comprehend. Nam So-young flowed across the landscape like heat shimmer, using micro-terrain and optical illusions that desert peoples had perfected over millennia. She reappeared on a different ridge, then vanished again before they could target her. Each appearance drew them further into terrain she had prepared, further from their landing site, deeper into the desert's embrace. "She is leading us away from our extraction point," observed Clixandra. "Classic desert warfare tactic." "Then, we stop following," Vextar decided. "Return to the landing site. We will force her to come to us." But when they tried to retrace their path, they discovered that Nam So-young had been altering their route subtly. Landmarks they remembered looked different. Rock formations seemed to have moved. The trail they had followed into the desert no longer led back out. Navigation systems show conflicting data, reported the team's sensor specialist. Magnetic anomalies are interfering with directional equipment. The desert was full of iron deposits that could confuse electronic navigation, but Nam So-young had learned to use these natural phenomena deliberately. She had guided them through areas where their instruments would be least reliable. As the sun began to set, the aliens found themselves lost in a landscape that had seemed empty and harmless 12 hours earlier. Their equipment was failing, their water supplies were compromised, and their enemy was somewhere in the darkness around them. "Establish defensive perimeter," Vextar ordered. "We wait for dawn, then signal for extraction." But the desert night brought new terrors. Without the sun's heat, temperatures dropped rapidly. Equipment that had been overheating began to freeze. Moisture that had been carefully balanced in their suits began forming ice crystals. Nam So-young moved through the darkness like a desert spirit. She had learned to navigate by stars that the aliens did not recognize, to find warmth in rock formations that looked cold, to locate water sources that their sensors could not detect. The attacks came throughout the night, not direct assaults but psychological warfare that exploited every fear the desert could inspire. Sounds moved around their perimeter, rocks clicking together in patterns that almost sounded like footsteps. Wind through stone formations that whistled like voices. The scrape of metal on stone that could have been weapons being sharpened. The aliens fired at shadows, wasted energy on false targets, and slowly lost their discipline as the desert worked on their minds. "Contact left flank," called Yexthil, firing into the darkness. "Contact right flank," echoed Genthara, her energy weapon lighting up empty rocks. But Nam So-young was not where they were shooting. She was patient, methodical, working from a distance, with tools they could not understand or detect. When dawn came, 3 more aliens were down. One had suffered complete environmental suit failure and was unconscious from heat exhaustion. Another had damaged his water recycling system and was severely dehydrated. The third had psychological breakdown from the stress of night combat in an environment that seemed actively hostile. Vextar's environmental suit alerted him that he had perhaps 2 hours of life support remaining. Around him, his elite warriors were collapsing one by one as their equipment failed and their bodies succumbed to conditions that the humans seemed to find comfortable. "What are you?" he asked, his voice distorted by his failing communication system. Nam So-young smiled, and in that expression he saw 60,000 years of human desert survival condensed into one person. "I am what the desert makes when it needs someone to survive," she said, "and now you know what Earth makes when it needs warriors." The rescue shuttle found them 6 hours later, guided by emergency beacons that Nam So-young had deliberately allowed to function. Vextar was the only alien still conscious and barely alive despite his advanced technology. Nam So-young was discovered 3 kilometers away, resting comfortably in shade she had created from local materials, showing no signs of distress from 2 days in conditions that had nearly killed the galaxy's most elite soldiers. As the shuttle lifted off, Vextar stared down at the desert that had destroyed his strike team. Somewhere in that red wasteland, a human was probably preparing to walk home across terrain that his people would need environmental suits just to survive. The message was clear. Earth had not created soft creatures who needed protection. Earth had created something far more dangerous than that. The Federation Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from 47 species sat in stunned silence as the combat reports played on the central display. 3 of their most elite military units had been systematically destroyed by individual humans using primitive weapons and environmental tactics. Dr. Kim Dae-hyun stood at the speaker's podium, no longer the nervous liaison who had greeted the aliens weeks earlier. Beside him, Colonel Park Min-ho held a data tablet containing detailed analysis of each engagement. "The results speak for themselves," Dae-hyun said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Your warriors entered what you called Earth's simple wilderness areas expecting easy victories. Instead, they discovered what those environments actually produce." Commander Vextar sat in the defendants section, his crystal form still bearing cracks from his desert encounter. The medical teams had repaired most of the damage, but the psychological scars were visible in the way his light patterns flickered. Uncertainly. 3 humans, continued Daehyun. 3 individuals armed with basic survival equipment. They defeated 18 of your finest warriors using nothing but knowledge that Earth taught them over thousands of generations. The Kelthari delegation leader stood, his crystal body glowing with agitation. This proves nothing except that your species has learned to hide and use tricks. Real warfare requires open combat between honorable opponents. Colonel Park stepped forward. With respect, Counselor, that statement reveals exactly why your forces failed. You define warfare as what you are good at, then dismiss everything else as tricks or cheating. He activated the tactical display, showing overhead views of each battleground. Let me explain what really happened in these encounters. The Amazon. Footage played first. The council watched as Sergeant Lee Jiwon moved through the jungle like liquid shadow, setting traps that used the environment itself as a weapon. Sergeant Lee did not use tricks, Park explained. She used 200,000 years of human evolution. Every technique she employed was learned by ancestors who had to master these skills or die. The jungle did not help her. She became the jungle. The Siberian engagement followed. Master Sergeant Choi Hyunwoo moved across the frozen landscape with impossible efficiency, turning blizzards and ice into weapons against enemies who could not adapt fast enough. Master Sergeant Choi demonstrated something your species seem unable to understand, Park continued. Humans do not conquer environments. We become part of them. We learn to think like winter, to move like storms, to endure like glaciers. The Australian footage completed the presentation. Staff Sergeant Nam So-young flowed across the desert like heat itself, using every aspect of that harsh environment to defeat enemies with superior technology and natural advantages. Staff Sergeant Nam showed you the final truth, Park said. Earth does not make humans soft. Earth makes humans into the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. The Zephyrian Huntmaster clicked his mandibles in disagreement, primitive adaptations to local conditions. On other worlds, these techniques would be useless. Dr. Kim Daehyun smiled, and several council members shifted uncomfortably at the expression. That assumes we can only function in Earth environments. Would you like to test that theory? He gestured, and the chamber's displays changed to show human colonies and outposts across the galaxy. Desert worlds where humans thrived in conditions that killed most other species. Ice planets where human settlements flourished in temperatures that made equipment fail. Jungle worlds where human communities had learned to work with ecosystems that other species could only survive by destroying. Everywhere we go, Daehyun said, we adapt. Not with technology that can fail, but with bodies and minds that evolution, shaped to overcome any challenge. The chamber erupted in noise as different species began arguing among themselves. Some called for immediate military action against Earth. Others demanded to know why their intelligence services had so completely misunderstood human capabilities. The Federation Supreme Commander, an ancient being from the first species to achieve spaceflight, raised an appendage for silence. Dr. Kim, the commander said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries, what does Earth want from this situation? Daehyun exchanged glances with Colonel Park. They had prepared for this question. Earth wants full Federation membership, Daehyun replied. Not as a protected species requiring guidance, but as equals contributing to galactic security. And if we refuse? Asked the Kelthari delegation leader. Colonel Park's answer was quiet but carried implications that made several council members uncomfortable. Then Earth will remain independent. We will continue to expand, continue to adapt, continue to become whatever each new world requires us to be. The threat was subtle but clear. Humanity would spread across the galaxy with or without Federation approval. The choice was whether that expansion would be as allies or as something else entirely. Commander Vextar spoke for the first time since the session began. I have seen what humans become when their world teaches them to fight. I recommend full membership with immediate integration into Federation military command structure. The Supreme Commander studied the data displays showing human capabilities. These 3 warriors. Are they exceptional examples of your species? No, Park replied. They are simply humans who remembered what Earth taught us. Every human settlement, in the galaxy contains thousands like them. The voting took 3 hours. When it finished, Earth had been granted full Federation membership with an unprecedented addition to the Charter. Human military advisors would be assigned to train Federation forces in what the official documents called environmental adaptation techniques. After the session, Dr. Kim Dae-hyun and Colonel Park Min-ho stood on the observation deck of the Federation orbital station, looking down at Earth's blue and white surface. "Do you think they understand what really happened here?" Dae-hyun asked. Park considered the question carefully. "Some do. Commander Vexitar understands that we are not the soft creatures they expected. The military leaders understand that human techniques can make their forces more effective. And the rest? The rest still think we won through luck and local knowledge," Park replied. "They believe that on their worlds with their advantages, the outcome would be different." Dae-hyun smiled. "Should we tell them about the other training programs? The ones where our people are learning to adapt to alien environments?" "No," Park said. "Let them discover that gradually. Better for everyone if they learn slowly just how adaptable humans really are." Far below them, on Earth's surface, Sergeant Lee Ji-won was already in the Amazon again, this time leading a mixed group of alien and human trainees through basic jungle survival. In Siberia, Master Sergeant Choi Hyun-woo was teaching Kelthari warriors how to function when their energy weapons failed, and they had to rely on natural abilities. In Australia, Staff Sergeant Nam So-young was showing Zephyrian hunters how to read weather patterns and find water in places their technology said was empty. The lessons were spreading. Soon Federation forces across the galaxy would begin learning what it meant to think like Earth, to adapt like humans, to become whatever their environment demanded. "There is one thing that still bothers me," Dae-hyun said. "They came here expecting to find weakness. Why were their intelligence reports so wrong?" Colonel Park's answer carried the satisfaction of someone whose species had just secured its place among the stars through superior strategy. "Because they looked at our cities, our technology, our comfortable civilization, and assumed that was what we really are," he said. "They never looked at the places that made us human. And now? Now they know that every human they meet is the product of the most dangerous training program in the galaxy. 4 billion years of Earth teaching us that only the adaptable survive." As they watched, a shuttle departed from the station heading for Earth's surface. It carried Federation military observers who would study human training met.